Do you know what your partner's up to when you're away and they're all alone?
No, what?
They're listening to the Screw podcast, of course.
What's that?
Sit back, relax, and listen.
So you're an orgasm addict. You're an orgasm addict. Sneaking in the back door with dirty magazines. So your mother wants to know what all the stains on the jeans. And you're an orgasm addict.
You're listening to the Screw podcast with Felicia Rose and A-Love. Hi, A-Love.
Hey, what's going on? I'm never sure what I'm going to say, but
Yeah, me neither. And you just press record and I start the show. You know?
You're an ultimate
like
performer. That. You do well. I mean, you're usually very prepared, and I love that about you, especially when you're doing things that are entertainment laden. I remember, I don't know if it was, I think it was like one of the first wrestling shows that you did. Well, maybe not the first, but it was one of them. And I knew you were working out your routine. You had some lines that you wanted to memorize. And I was just so impressed with the level of professionalism you were putting into it. And it shows when you see clips from your wrestling things, you don't skip a beat. You don't stutter. You are right on target every time. You're amazing.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that a lot of people are they talk shit and they're like, you should be able to do it off the cuff. And I agree that there is a level of improv that goes into any kind of live performance. So you do need to be prepared to do some sort of improv or potentially have to do it. And I do agree with that sentiment, but at the same time, if you look at scripted, and I don't mean so heavily that it feels like the person is reading in their mind, but if you do look at scripted versus unscripted on the mic, especially in a wrestling setting, there's a huge fucking difference. There's a reason why Cody Rhodes nails his promos every single time. And they go over a specific way every single time. MJF is another example. That one promo from Becky Lynch after she got her face rocked by Nia Jax is another. Anyways, I'm just yammering on. But a lot of people are like, it shouldn't be scripted. And I'm like, okay, you go have a 5-minute conversation with an audience without any
off the
scripting.
cuff. Yeah.
Now, a lot of times when I'm working shows, or at least in the past, I would show up and they would just there was nothing planned ahead of time. They'd be like, just say, this is the point we're trying to get over. And those I still was able to do, but those are the ones where maybe I did stutter through a line or maybe I did miss a point or two, So there is a huge difference between the ones that I have a basic generalized plan in my head versus the ones where I don't.
Nice.
And I will always advocate for having at least a rough outline of a script because I just think it's sharper and crisper and you can get your lines over in a better way. And your cadence and just your general... I like to call it a song, the way that you sing the song, if you will, is going to sound a lot better if you have your beats figured out versus if you're just kind of going on the fly. And some people are really, really, really good on the fly, but it's very rare. So, when people are like, you should be able to do it off the top of your head. Yeah, of course you should. But is it going to sound as good as if you have at least a basic outline? No, it's not. So shut the fuck up and learn your shit.
Yeah, I mean, I always find that for work presentations too. If I know how the main points I want to hit, how I want to say them, where I want to emphasize enthusiasm and whatnot, It always feels good. It helps with your confidence too. I mean, I don't care how great an improver you can be. If you stumble through any kind of performance, it starts detracting from your confidence.
That's another piece of it.
Your ability to get out there. So, it's.
I agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to celebrate.
There's a reason. Thank you. I just think there's a huge reason. There's a reason I have always quote unquote gotten over during my promos. What I have to say on the mic, I don't I can't remember a time when it wasn't received the way it was supposed to have been received.
Mm.
Now, do people cheer for me sometimes when I'm supposed to be more of a heel? Yeah, of course, because they like what I'm saying. But
Right.
either way, I'm getting an audience reaction. It's never crickets. And I think that if it's all about line delivery. So if you set up a really solid line to then be your punctuation at the end of what you're saying, it's perfection compared to just saying it out of order or maybe adding in points at the end instead of the beginning. Like you need a good solid buildup. And anyways, I should teach classes on how to cut promos. I understand.
I mean,
That's
you
fine.
are really great. And I definitely feel like I've been guilty of cheering for you when you've been like a heel before. Although, wait, have I seen you as a heel?
No,
I only saw you as.
you've only seen me as face, yeah.
Didn't we throw
It's
something
just
on the
that I'm-
stage? Like toilet paper?
Streamers.
Streamers. I don't know. Same thing, really. Same concept.
Not toilet paper. Oh my God, you're so cute. I love that.
Pablo, honey, wash
Yeah.
your ass. Oh, man. Yeah, so, yeah, I was thinking that because, I get, because of the screw, all sorts of wrestling stuff all the time, and I say,
Yeah.
and
I'm
occasionally,
sure.
like when the people in the clips look really hot, I'll like tune in. Well, and because lately I've been feeling like, I'm 6'5", right? And I think I'm like booking like 220 right now. So I'm looking like really massive, which I like discovered when you're 6'5", like people kind of like you to look massive. Otherwise you just look like a beanpole. I mean, like attraction wise or whatever. But I was also thinking like, I look kind of like a wrestler right now. Now, granted, I'm not as big as nearly some of the dudes that I've seen lately who have seemed to be getting bigger by the day. Which, I mean, you definitely caught a presence, on stage, especially, when you're massive, almost, not quite sumo wrestler like, but, I think one of the guys, who is it? He's massive, like, and I don't remember him being that massive. He has like the club, the polyamory club or whatever. Oh my God.
Oh, MV Young.
Yeah, MV Young. MV
Yeah.
Young. And
Oh yeah, no, he was like I have a picture of us two together from before the pandemic, and we were both twinks. Like we both packed on weight. And like he did it with muscle, I didn't. But it's so funny because like we need to take an updated photo together because like one of our last photos together we looked so tiny, and now we are both bulky, and it's really funny. Like the difference is incredible. I mean, again, mine has nothing to do with muscle, but it is true that we both bulked.
That's amazing.
We stayed in a bulk.
So I was remembering like I went many years ago, and this is only like sort of related because it's when I realized like I could be like really into like big boys in the sack, so to speak. And it was when I had the fortunate pleasure of like going to bed with Mr. Leather World, I think he was. I think we were living in Brooklyn. And I don't know if you remember
Not
this.
to be confused with Mr. Worldwide.
But like when you rock,
which is Pitbull, obviously.
Oh, right, that's right. When you rock this like, massive body and you throw it around with like gusto and like swagger, it just like melts me. I'm like, there's a boy who knows how to eat and knows how to fuck.
Yeah, you are the biggest I've seen you without being unhealthy, if that makes sense. I don't know if I've seen you bigger than this, but I'm pretty sure whenever you were sort of this size in the past, you weren't as healthy as you are now.
No,
so
for
there is
sure.
a huge
For
difference.
sure.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty active right now. I think, unfortunately, I'm not able to do a lot of like midsection stuff because of this fucker in my belly button, but I'm just like I can't do a setup to save my life. But you know, I feel good, you know. I mean, the problem with like weight on me is always like lower back pain, like can happen
Mm,
sometimes, you know, and it's
same.
just that's always frustrating, you know, and I definitely notice that, you know, when I like tip over 200, it starts being like an issue. But oh, see,
Yeah.
we're staying so true to form. I shared this with you, and I asked AI what the Screw podcast was about. And one of the things it mentioned is that we talked about body consciousness and body positivity and things like that. And I was like, wow, I don't know if it like actually listened to the podcast or like where it got all this very accurate information, but it was like very spot on with the things that we talk about. It was kind of cool. Although I
Hell
feel
yeah.
it's like Big Brother is watching us, so to speak. but I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, at least I know what it's gonna say if anybody else like types in there and asks what the Screw podcast is about.
Sure. Yeah.
I was like feeling
I mean,
very
I
comfortable.
read that and I was like, wow, that's actually
It's
exactly
pretty good.
what we would want it
Yeah,
to say,
way more
essentially.
articulate than I think we actually
Yeah,
like are.
exactly. I'd be
But
like, you know, we talk about sex. We don't really care if you like it or not, you know. Oh, by the
exactly.
way, I did not
Yes.
share with you this
Ooh.
morning, speaking
Uh-huh.
of our podcast that we are on, which is funny. One of our avid listeners messaged me to say that he was, quote, here for the straight men hating women conversation. And
Ooh.
from what I know, he is straight. I'm not
Interesting.
quite sure. I mean, he works for queer rights, but I'm not sure if he identifies as queer, so I apologize if he does. But he's as close to queer as a straight man can get, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. But
Sure.
he was here for the conversation, and I like to hear that kind of feedback because it's a reminder to me that I'm not just in my own fucking Felicia Island making shit up. You know, like these are real. Who better to know what a straight cis man thinks and says than another straight cis man who has to probably be in a room of straight cis men who typically are probably more comfortable than being in a room of, say, women or queer people or whatever, you know.
Right.
And I don't know. It felt validating because it is nice that A, people listen, and B, people agree.
Well, you know,
So shout
I've
out to
thought a
you.
lot about what you said the last podcast, because I was like, you know, again, it's always the tongue in cheek, especially around queer men when we're talking about this. Be like, I mean, I've never met a guy who seems to like really like worship and talk about like enjoying like a woman. It's always in a very conquesty like way. And I was thinking, you know, for because like I'll contextualize it. For me, when I am like ever sexual with women, which is like every once in a while over the years, I am always very insistent that it has to be a queer woman, because like and you know, queer is again, it's such a catch-all, but I do believe that there are plenty of men who are, you know, who enjoy having sex with women that like are queer. And I'm saying this because I think, you know, given our conversation, there almost does have to be like a little bit of queerness going on to like really respect and appreciate feminine energy, in the sense that like there's so much misogyny going around, and I think men who are like hold fast and true, I'm a Kinsey zero or whatever, have like some level of misogyny embedded in their like perspectives, you know. And it's tough because, you know, I mean, it's certainly as a queer woman, I would want to sleep with like a queer man because it's the only way to kind of guarantee on some level that you're not going to get. Now, are there queer men that are not overly like pleasant with women? There certainly are, but I would make the argument that that's a little bit different, that there's a lot of societal things that go on, and a lot of queer men have been hurt by women in the same kind of way
Mm,
that they've been hurt by like heterosexual identifying men, in the sense that like toxic masculinity is something anybody can carry the torch for in this society, you
sure.
know. And we've talked about that
Well, and
before.
at least queer men that aren't dating women trying to avoid hurting.
Of course, yeah, and right. I mean,
I know that sounds ridiculous
no,
in
no,
a way,
no.
but if you have issues, I mean, everybody should just be working on their, misogyny and issues with women to begin with. But if you
Right.
have issues with women, like, at least date men. At the fucking very least, which was my whole point last week. We have all these straight, quote unquote, straight cis men walking around refusing to wash their ass and consider being in a queer space and doing all this stuff,
Sure.
and yet they fucking cannot stand women. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, at least put yourself in a space where women aren't. Like,
Right.
please.
Yeah. Exactly.
You'd be much happier. Also go to therapy. Like, thanks.
Also good at therapy. Thank you. Yeah.
Everybody has mommy issues to some degree. Whether, you could have had the best mother in the world growing up, and you probably have at least slight mommy. Maybe you love your mommy too much issues. Either way, it is a wide spectrum, and I understand that a lot of misogyny starts at the home. It starts with you looking at your matriarch and hating that person, and then going out into society, and society reinforces all of those ideologies. And I understand that is a piece of this puzzle. Go to therapy.
Yeah.
Go to therapy.
Well, and I think about it because there's a lot of crossovers where sometimes, like, I'm not even sure that, like, queer men overly appreciate sometimes having sex with other queer men because of, like, the level of either aggression or competition or something in there. And, and I'm always trying to psychologize this as, like, there's all these insecurities, especially around sex, because we don't do well in this country, at least, talking about it, educating about it, making men feel comfortable and women feel comfortable about their bodies. All these things, like, stack up and create these very, almost like warlike sexual interactions. And I do think that, like, is kind of across the board, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
And,
yeah.
Whether it's, for men, whether it's, like, your cock size or, like, level of hardness or any of this, like, ridiculous stuff that comes up again and again, rather than just trying to create spaces that are about pleasure, right? Whether it's, competing with friends on, who did you bag, how hot were they, all the ridiculous stuff that comes out. And, I call this out, almost equally in the queer community because, whether we like it or not, a lot of people are still modeling their interactions over, heteronormative interactions. Because what other strong examples do we have? And it's funny, it's like one of the things in the AI thing, I was thinking about, what is it that the screw is essentially, like, about? And I think it really is that, living outside the, like, confines of, like, these typical binaries, even within, and I don't just mean sexuality, I just mean within the discussions about socializing and romance and all these things, and even friendships. I for many years couldn't believe, I'm like, do women even like other women? Sometimes you just see this, like, energy, and I get it. It's, again, like, the pressures of competition or the idea that like scarcity is a thing. There are plenty of people in this world looking for love, looking for intimacy. We don't have to act as if you've got someone at the starting line right next to you that you have to run faster than or be stronger than or better than.
That's pick me energy, right? And I think that luckily now that I have a love-hate relationship with things like TikTok and the internet, but luckily now that there are more people advocating or calling it out or explaining what that looks like, I think a lot more people are shying away from actually acting like that or thinking like that or wanting to think like that. I think I was always in competition with women in my head, and I had to be the dirty girl in the room. Oh, because boys like the dirty. I'm not hot enough because, listen, Listen, you could put lipstick on a pig all day, it's still a pig. I was never hot enough to be in those spaces with the hot girls, but I was a slut. So my
Yeah.
mouth was slutty. I mean, whether or not I was fucking anybody was not really like the point,
Yeah, no.
but I was a perceived whore, and the
Hmm.
whore is welcomed into the boys' spaces. And I wanted the boys to like me because I wanted that energy around me because there's no competition, right? This is all just stuff I grew up having
Mm.
ingrained in me. I am in competition with the girl to my right and the girl to my left, whether they're my best friends or not. I need to, sleep with the guy first or try to, and oftentimes I wasn't the one that they picked. But in my head, I was getting rewarded because guys would be like, "Oh, she's cool. She can hang. Oh, yeah, we can invite her to the guys' night out because
Uh-huh.
she's a whore. So in my head, I was getting, or not in my head, in real life, I was getting rewarded for that behavior. And I think a lot of women learned it over time because that's what we were taught. We have all these songs that are like, I'm not like the other girls. I'm not, like there's
Right.
one wrestler that's like, I'm not like most girls. It's like, what the fuck does being a girl even mean?
Right.
And I think that we're finally deconstructing these conversations and we're having better ones instead. Do those people still exist? Yes. Are people still having to unlearn these behaviors and these ideologies? Yeah, of course. But it's a lot less now, and it's more abundantly called out, which is nice. It's nice, when somebody, for example, somebody will post like, "Oh, my postpartum journey was really rough," and da da da, and like this is how I handle dealing with my kids.
Mm.
And some woman under, well, back in my day, we just did this, and we didn't go to therapy, and people are like, okay,
Yeah,
and
and
you
your kids
probably
your kids
fucked your
probably
kids up.
yeah, your kids probably fucking hate you too.
People try to be pick me's about every single subject, men
Mm.
and women and non-binary. Like people try to be pygmies, not pygmies.
I don't
People
think
try to be pick-me's
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
a lot of, and it exists. And luckily we are pulling away from that because I absolutely fucking hate that behavior. It's like, it's something that, again, it's giving like 17-year-olds trying to stand out in the crowd.
You,
And it's like
you know,
eventually you have to get over it and figure out that like just your personality should be enough,
you know,
period.
I
Not you trying to be something that you're not.
I had never actually like contextualized like the slut thing until, and it's funny, and I don't know if you remember, but in college you were fucking around with this dude, and he was also messaging me. I think he was a little bi or whatever, and he mentioned something to me, and I'm sure I told you about it, that, oh, Felicia's awesome, but she's not the kind of girl you take home to mom, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
And I remember
Mm-hmm.
thinking, wow, these dudes really don't know what this bad. You rather not pick the girl that will fuck you.
Right.
You rather, like, is that what these men really want? A life full of, and maybe it's because somewhere in the back of the head they're like, I can just fuck whoever. I just won't tell her about it. I have no idea what the reasoning is to decide, oh, it's more important, and talk about twisted relationships with mothers, like that your mom
Right.
has to approve of who you're
As if your mom is in our bedroom, mind you. As if I'm gonna meet your mom and pull down my lip and say, "Look at my cum tattoo."
Yeah.
Now, is it a little different now that I have an online presence and I do porn? And yeah, it's a little different. I can understand how that, like, they could Google me, for example. Okay, fine. That might be a little bit different. However, what I do is not your mom's business,
Seriously.
and I do parents so well.
You really do.
Meaning, I sound sexual, but like, I how many times have I been around your mom and fucking whooped it up with her?
Yeah, you guys had a wonderful conversation about butt sex, which my mom brought up.
Exactly. My roommate, who has known me since I was fucking 12, she always says, you are one of the only friends I do trust around my family members, because I know, she was like, you are the most wild person in my life, but I know that you are not going to show up and say some inappropriate shit or shit that's just jarring or upsetting to parents, or if they say something upsetting, like, you're not going to have that visceral response as if you would with a peer, like, your parent could be a shitbag, in my opinion, and I'm still going to show up and give them the respect if you are a parent, and I have to respect you accordingly.
Totally.
Now, if we're out in the wild and I don't know who the fuck you are, is different. But
In the wild.
my friends' parents are going to get respect. So it's just funny that I was always, quote unquote, the girl you don't bring home to your mom. But meanwhile, like, I'm the perfect person to bring home to your
I
mom
know.
because
And
I can fucking conversate all day with whomever.
And I remember at the time thinking, like, because you had just come out of a like long-term relationship, I believe, and you were
Yes.
like
His parents loved me.
the sickeningly model girlfriend. That's just my very judgy opinion, but because like I'm the type, if you're the type of person that I like can bring home to mom, you're probably gonna bore the fuck out of me. Like I can't help it, And I've dated those people, and like of course, the responses from the parents are always like in accolades, and in the end, I'm like, but something about you is like performative. If you're like getting along, you are just naturally charismatic, and I think out of all the friends that I had at the time when my mom met you, she just really liked you. There was no like I think everybody else was kind of suspect. What certain people find like rude or whatever varies from parent to parent.
Sure, right, exactly. I'm not going to be every single parent's cup of tea, but
Sure.
I change my behavior based on who I'm with when it comes to a person, like a parent or a grandparent or something like that. Like I can put on the show, I can put on the act, and if I don't have to put on the act, even better, like with your mom, for example, I could just be my goofy ass self, and that works well too.
Yeah.
But I just think that it's funny that people are like, quote unquote, I couldn't bring you home to my mom, but you are subscribed to me because the person you did bring home to your mom
doesn't fuck
isn't
you.
scratching my itch. Okay?
Right.
And again, this is not pick me shit. I'm not trying to say that I'm better. That I'm just saying maybe you didn't pick the right woman. Now, can you still enjoy porn and separate the two? Yeah. That has nothing. Maybe I just have big bazongas and that's your thing. Whatever. That's not what I'm trying to say. But there are people that message me daily that are like, I wish I could be with you instead. Again, maybe you made the wrong choice about who you brought home to mom. That's all I'm trying to say. Like, first of all, let's not pit people against each other. Like, that's fucking annoying. But also, maybe don't make choices based off of what society says you're supposed to do, right? Maybe it's okay to make the choice of the girl that's going to fulfill all of your fantasies forever.
Yeah.
Or whatever you deem the most important thing, maybe that's something that you actually look into doing or getting for yourself. You can have, the cookie cutter person, fine, but
absolutely,
you also might not want that, and you should probably consider looking outside of what society says you're supposed to do.
Well, and I think that is a really good point there. When everybody's having these discussions about who is the right person, or I think what goes along with that is we all have a very low capacity for kind of accepting and enjoying our happiness. If something is, everybody, and I hear it all the time, I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop, or sayings like that, where it's like, we don't get to relish our happiness. There's always some level of like guilt in enjoying something where we feel like, oh, this is too easy, or this is, this is going to be something that's going to end in disaster, or I just don't deserve this. Right. And I think that's a lot of the energy that like goes with some of these things, especially in relationships, is I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve to have all of my boxes ticked. Well, yeah, you do. And you have a much huger level of success if you make sure you're ticking those boxes, that you understand what it is that makes you happy. And I'm not saying this is strictly about sex, but it is about pleasure, and it is about like happiness. And we all wander around kind of thinking, well, things are going too well. I shouldn't do this. It's like when people call out of work, right? you know, and like, oh, I feel so bad. I'm always like, why do you fucking feel bad? Like, don't feel bad about calling out of work. Call out of work. Enjoy your fucking day, especially if you aren't sick and just are like looking for a mental health day, because nothing in society is going to cater to you to try to make you happy. There's no externalities that are going to be working overtime to see that your needs are met. You're the only one in charge of that, you know? So get the slut. If the slut makes you happy, enjoy the slut.
Right. Stop trying to appease your mom. You're not fucking your mom.
Exactly.
You're not marrying your mom.
You're not fucking your mom.
And if you want to, go to therapy. Or you can buy my mommy videos at felicia-rose.manyvids.com.
That was a perfect plug. I love that. You know, it's funny.
I love a perfect plug.
I was watching this film called The Fever. It was a Brazilian film, so it was like called La Febre or something like that, and it was about kind of like this indigenous man who lives in Brazil, and he's kind of like teetering in between like the modernized world and you know, his village where, you know, he was a part of nature and like, you know, grew his food. And there was a lot of things in there talking about, you know, supermarket food versus living off the land and eating fruit and vegetables. And anyways, he goes through this, you know, kind of like tale. And at one point, you know, he's in his work's office and they recommend, oh, you know, you seem pretty down lately or something's off about you, you know, maybe you should see a psychologist or something. We can like recommend a psychologist for you. And he's very, you know, at first, like I thought he was like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. And, you know, sometimes in these things you think, okay, this is about the therapy. But what was really kind of interesting was that he knew what it was about. He knew it was that he wasn't living in a world of connections that he really enjoyed. There was like a emotional sickness that was going on that had to do with like a disconnect of living in the modern world and not connecting with people and his family in the same way he did when he was a child. And I'm bringing this up because, you know, therapy, I love recommending therapy. And again, we still live in a world that's very judgy around that. And you don't have to have a diagnosis to go to therapy. You just have a need that you have things that you need to talk about or work through for yourself. And that at the base is the best and most useful part of therapy, is being able to have somebody there that's dedicated for you. But again, it's connected to that whole thing. Oh, I don't deserve like undivided attention to my problems. Well,
yeah, but those same exact people are going to hit up their best friends and trauma dump on them on like a fucking everyday basis. And
sure.
I say to that, fuck off. Listen, you go to your friends when you're in a time of need, you vent a little here and there, you update them on the shit that's going on in your life, but they cannot be your everything and all. They can't. It's unfair. I do not know a single person that is just so well adjusted with life that they aren't going through something.
Sure.
And therefore, to put your shit on somebody else is fucked up. And so I personally believe that the people that think that they don't need therapy or that they're doing fine are the ones that usually need it the most, because they think that they don't need therapy because they have friends to talk to. That's nice. Your friends are probably fucking struggling, and hearing your shit is hurting them. Stop hurting your friends. Go to therapy.
Well, and I
fucking can't stand that
More
shit.
importantly, you may love your friends and you may like what they say, but therapy and like talking through your problems isn't always about liking what they say or liking what advice that you're, you know, given. Your friends and family members are biased. They're biased. They also have like a level of like probably subconscious selfishness going on where they would like you to be in a better place, either to meet them in the middle and have like a mutually enjoyable time or any of these things. And when
they'd like you to shut the fuck up, and they're shutting you the fuck up by telling you exactly what you want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true.
I cannot tell you how many times I personally cannot handle a conversation, and I know that the person on the other end of the conversation cannot handle me telling them that. So I
Yeah.
tell them what they want to hear and I move on with my day. And what they want to hear is not what they should be hearing. They should
Yeah.
be hearing something that a licensed therapist has told
Is that
them
because you're a
instead.
people
And
pleaser?
I am a people pleaser, but also I'm a Felicia pleaser because I've not
Yeah.
put myself first for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I am now like in retrograde putting myself first in more of an abundance. And I think that it's showing through in a lot of my relationships and friendships because I can't make space that I don't have anymore.
Well,
I
and
gave and I gave and I gave, and I'm now spread so thin I have nothing left to give. You have to go to therapy.
well, right.
Don't talk to
And
me.
it's really tricky because, like, what is friendship, right? It's a subjective. There's like not a clear definition, but I
Of
can tell
course.
you like the things that it's not, and a friendship that you're called upon to constantly maintenance the other person, especially when it's very one way, which does often
Mm.
happen, and it sucks because if you are a, generally good natured person who does like people, and you have somebody, because people who are doing this usually will go out of their way to make you feel guilty for not listening to them as well. And they will like say
Oh,
things
of
like,
course. Yes.
but I thought we were friends and things like that. That's not friendship. And
I
if you,
thought I could go to you and talk to you about
yeah,
these things. I thought you were open to hearing about my problems.
there's
What?
there's a difference between airing like a momentary anxiety and like you said, like a trauma dump, and trauma dump is
Right.
is hard. You have to also think about the other person. You don't necessarily know what part of your trauma is like triggering and exhausting for that other person as well, like,
Absolutely.
and that's
This is how I like to kind of put it into perspective. This is the difference between going to your friends in a time of need and trauma dumping. Going to your friends in a time of need is something like, I just got dumped by my boyfriend out of the blue, or whatever. I just got dumped by my boyfriend, period.
sure.
And I need my friends. I'm sad. I'm in a bad place. I'm
Yeah.
crying on the couch. I need someone to come over with a basket of plushies and ice cream and snacks, and we're going to watch movies, and you're going to make me smile. Versus 3 months after the breakup, you are still texting me every single day about the breakup.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I am there for you when the death occurs, and for a little bit after the death occurs. After that, I cannot wake up every day to
Yeah.
text messages about a death in your life.
Yeah. I mean,
Period. And nobody should have to do that.
It-
That's what therapy is for.
well, and here's the thing. I'm sure know that there's plenty of people out there, and I'm sort of one myself who is like, when people are trying to do this, I most of the time, because I am in a good place with my own shit, I can hear it, and I can be there for you to a point, as anybody can, because you're not going to trigger me and you're not going to traumatize me. But the point being is you're also creating a dynamic. And that dynamic is eventually where my cutoff point is. It's like when you ask somebody how they are and then they never ask you back how you are, and that's what
Absolutely.
it starts feeling like. And I've had plenty of people over the years, and I'm sure if any of them are listening, like, one day Aaron just stopped like responding and talking to me. And it's like, most likely the reason is because you were constantly only contacting me when you needed something like emotional, and that I felt it was very one-sided. Now, should I articulate that? Perhaps, but if somebody is in trauma, I'm usually, me, I will always advocate for therapy. I'm like, you should probably, especially if it's like a reoccurring thing, you should probably talk to somebody about this. You should probably talk to somebody about this. You should probably
Right.
talk, because then the nature of your relationship with that person is just about that. It's about what does this person need, and there's no pleasure in that. Just so circle it back
Right.
to
It's a
pleasure
dependence.
activism.
It's
Yeah,
it's not codependence, it's just dependence.
Yeah.
And again, it's putting your friend in a position that it's not fair to them. It doesn't matter what the subject is. Like, I don't want to sound, I feel like I sound brash by saying, you know,
No.
6 months after somebody dies in your life, I can't hear about it every day. Nobody can, because I have my own deaths I have to deal with.
Right.
I have my own trauma. I have my own PTSD. I have to wake up and I have to manage every feeling in my brain. And I have a lot of shit in my brain. And so I'm managing me.
Yeah.
And now I'm managing every single person that sends me a text message.
Sure.
Why? That's not
Yeah.
fair. It's you know, again, in the here and now, a major thing happens to you. That's what your friends are there for.
Right.
6 months from now, you're having a bad day. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about your bad day, referencing the thing from 6 months ago. But I'm talking about that everyday shit.
Absolutely.
Nobody can hear the same fucking thing every day. I don't care if it's a positive thing. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to hear every day the same fucking conversation. It's just exhausting. Where do you go from there? What kind of advice do you even give? It's just get a journal. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, get a fucking journal and get a therapist. And again, I sound like a big dick, but
No.
I'm
Look,
a big advocate. I'm
pe-
a self-soother. I vent and then I self-soothe. I don't want to talk about my fucking it. When people are like, "How are you doing?" If I truly don't see an end in sight on my answer being not great, I tell them, I will update you when the answer has changed. Please stop asking me. Because I don't want to
Totally.
respond trauma dump to you.
Yeah, no
and
doubt.
I'm not saying I'm better than you because this is how I handle my emotions.
Sure.
No, I have plenty of shit to work on and work through and get better at and grow up and all
Sure.
of that. But I do realize that it is not fair for me to wake up every day and make someone else feel as fucking awful as I feel. It's just not fair.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Well, and it's kind of one of those examples where, like, you know, the word selfish gets a really bad rap, but the longer you're in therapy, you realize like how important it is for like actual self-help and self-health to utilize some level of selfishness, where it says, you know, are my needs getting met in any like interaction? And I know both sides of this coin. Like, you're probably gonna hate the way this sounds because it's tricky and it takes practice, but there is a level, you know, I say it to activist friends of mine all the time, like, you have to have a level of selfishness, because once you get involved, your phone never stops ringing. You know, there's always something and someone that needs help, and, you know, and kudos. I'm always, you know, I'm amazed at these people, but somewhere in that, you have to take time to take care of yourself, to make sure that you're whole and that you're feeling good, because you're useless to the fight and the cause if you're not, you know? And then what about everything else, you know? I mean, no offense, but if you're constantly hearing negative shit from people, like, what happens when you hang up the phone and your partner wants to like get frisky? Like, you're probably not in the fucking mood for it. This is, again, it's my selfishness around the idea of pleasure activism. Yes, people have shit. Yes, you should be there for people on some level, but like not like that, because then it imposes on your stasis, your ability to keep yourself grounded and whole and healthy. And you know, it's a hard lesson. So again, go to fucking therapy. Even if you don't think you need to go to therapy, the pluses of it is the idea of, do I need to go to therapy or not, is not the question to be asking. The question to be asking is, would therapy help enhance my life? And I've never seen a case where yes isn't the answer after people start going and they find the right fit and all that jazz. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, to respond to like one of the things that you said, you know, you're saying a level of selfishness has to go into this. The people that are expecting a daily therapy session out of you are being selfish themselves.
For sure.
So you don't look at it as you being selfish. Just look at it as you're matching energy.
Yeah.
If they're coming to you every single day with stuff that you don't have the space for, turn around and do the exact thing that they would do to you, which is to set a boundary.
Yeah.
And tell them that you can't do that thing anymore.
Yeah.
I think we always look at it as one side of like, well, this person really needs help. It's like, okay, and I am not
Yeah.
a fucking therapist.
Yeah, and you have to
I can only help you by listening. I can't help you by
Sure.
actually giving anything back to you.
You have to
What am I
advocate
supposed
for
to do with that?
yourself. Yeah, you have to advocate for yourself, because whether you have trauma or sadness or any of these things, you have a process that you're going to need to go through. And it's best done by somebody who, can be tuned into you, who doesn't have any personal, emotional, like, stuff at stake with the relationship. Whenever people
And they're being paid.
and they're being paid, exactly. And that's what they're there for. If you have an infection, you go to the doctor to get you antibiotics. You don't go to your friend to give you antibiotics to feel better. And that's,
And also, we have to remember how many, the whole spoon theory thing, and it's very real. If I give you 2 of my spoons a day for your mental health stuff, where the fuck do I get all the spoons to complete my day?
Totally.
When does my day become my day in full?
Totally.
That's not fair to anybody.
Totally.
And I've done a lot of self-reflection on this, because I'm the first person to be like, anytime you need anything, hit me up, to whoever it is, friend or not, acquaintance.
Sure.
What am I doing? People pleasing. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it, Felicia. And I have to tell myself, again, you cannot help the passenger to your right if your fucking mask isn't on first. Put on your oxygen mask first.
Yeah. I love that analogy.
And then go from there.
Yeah, it's always a
Lay out your spoons for the day, and if you have 10 spoons and you only need 9 for yourself, give that other spoon to somebody else. Fine. You are allowed to do that. You should do it. But if you lay out your spoons for the day and you only have 8 and you actually need 9 for yourself, reel it back. You're giving out too much.
Yeah.
You're not getting enough in return.
Yeah, and like bleeding all over the place, it's not good for anybody. It's not going to center you, and ultimately, let's be real. When people are doing this, like, most of the time they're inconsolable. So you can say X, Y, and Z, and it really won't make a difference. So it's kind of like, it's where I think the idea of consent comes up in a, like,
yes,
unusual manner, but it's still a concept of consent. Like, you haven't asked me if I'm, like, even ready to receive this information most of the time. It's
yep.
There's no preparation. Maybe you are somebody who can handle, like, taking more baggage from somebody, but you still deserve to be prepped for it.
I have set some boundaries with some of my friends where I ask them to just ask me first, and they do. They're like, hey, do you have the space for a vent? Or they'll send me, like, a long voice memo venting and just preface it with, hey, this is about a vent, or this is about this is trauma dumpy or trigger warning or something.
Right.
Please don't listen to it if you're not in the right space. And I'll put it off for days. And then when I have the space, and there's no resentment there, because we've all set up a system that works for everybody. I am not always ready to hear a trauma dump about XYZ the same way you wouldn't be ready for the same in return. So therefore, preface it, and I will get to it when I have those spoons ready for you. Right. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Absolutely. I think that's really beautifully said, and we need to talk about these things, because the trickle down is everywhere. I think about, how this relates to, like, pleasure, because my big thing, and I always say it jokingly, and it's a little crass, is like, the fuck pool is poisoned. Even if you, like, find a partner, like, they're carrying around some level of trauma, and I always notice this when, like, you go on a date or you have, like, a hookup, and all of a sudden, like, everything about this person's life who you just met today.
Oh God.
And you're like, okay. And then you're like, how am I supposed to transfer this into, like, pleasure energy, and it feel appropriate or whatever, and, like, then that makes you feel bad. Like, oh, I'm sitting here like thinking more about my own pleasure and my own stuff while this is a human being in need. But like that's not your fucking responsibility.
Right.
It's just not. And again, like the goal is that, you know, everybody gets to feel pleasure. You know, talk about selfish, you know, it's everybody should like get to experience in this. So do your part to like let everybody get to experience this.
Right.
We have so much stuff going on in our heads, and you know, sometimes we need to talk about like it's all fun and games, and like, you know, you and I can talk about really naughty stuff, but we know that there's also stuff going on behind all that stuff for everybody, including us, where, you know, I would love to be a puta 24/7, but I don't always have the space or the energy or the mind frame for that either. So,
Sure.
you know, just some food
I
for
find that
thought.
those people that you are in spaces with that are, you know, like you just kind of explained, somebody that you're potentially going to hook up with or something like that. The ones, you know, your first date essentially, or your first meetup, and they're trauma dumping on you. Those are the exact candidates that need therapy because they clearly are starved for being listened to.
Yeah.
Now, as a small percentage of the population that it just do that. Then
Yeah.
they, you know, like you might not even be hooking up with them. They might just be like a person at the bar, and all of a sudden, you know, like that their cat just died and their mom's grandma is in the hospital, you know, like weird shit like that. But that's not typically what you see. Those are very specific cases.
Yeah.
What you normally see is just somebody excited to actually speak to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and you might be set up to in a hookup situation, and all of a sudden you're playing therapist because this poor person hasn't had the opportunity. Now, any kind of talk therapy or anything that is not necessarily covered by insurance, or maybe you don't have insurance, these are privileged things. I understand that not everybody has access to these things. Okay, I'm not trying to say that like
totally.
you're a piece of shit if you can't get a therapist because of XYZ. But if you have the resources and you still hit up your friend, that's when you need to start reflecting. That's the conversation you need to start having.
And these are always the people that are like constantly telling you like, you know, they don't mean anybody, everybody sucks, da 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 da, you know, and I'm always like trying to gently say, you know, it could be your approach or the energy that you're getting. You know, I'm not trying to blame someone because everybody in their head, you know, they're justified. No, you don't understand. Da da da. Yes, I understand there's a lot of shitty people out in the world, but we also have like some level of responsibility for like the energy we put out is sometimes the energy we're going to get back. So, yeah. Right.
If everybody that you've ever met is shitty, maybe it's the problem is you and not them, honestly. Let's be for real.
Amen. I love that I say that all atheistically. I really mean A-men.
You really mean a man, yeah.
Hey man, what's up?
We should just start saying a love instead of amen.
Right? A love. Oh, I like the ring to that.
A love.
A love.
Yeah, that's gonna be our new amen / snaps. We're just gonna say a love.
Oh shit.
People are gonna be like, what the fuck does that mean? Well, listen to our podcast. You'll know.
You know. And this is how we mix it up. So tune in next week and we'll like think of something sexy to talk to you about. But these things need to be said, and all this human interaction, it's not just about the physical, and it is about the emotional. It is about what we're dealing with, you know. And I have to say the boundary creating thing is a very difficult process. And some people, when they decide they're going to do it, they can come off really harsh with how they do it. There's no right way to do it.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to say, you know, I always say like things like, I'm not available for that. Like I can't personally like synthesize that right now or stuff like that, you know, because it's hard. But boundaries are super important for having like emotional health and like really balanced relationships with people. There's no way around it. You can't, oh, I love somebody so they're entitled to every like inch of me. That's going to end in disaster eventually. It's going to end in resentment on one side or the other, and it doesn't stop. Once you build that kind of dance with somebody, it just keeps coming. It's very vampirical, and
I was going to say that my number one suggestion is to not wait until it becomes a problem.
exactly.
I am again a people pleaser, and I will not set boundaries until it's fucking too late, and then I explode on the person.
Yeah.
And I've done that before, and I had to deeply apologize to people that mean a lot to me because I was fucking awful in response to finally feeling like I was pushed over the edge and I no longer can handle whatever it might be.
No,
it could be something simple. It could be my roommate talking to me about her job. Like, shut the fuck,
totally.
No, calm down, set a boundary. I don't want to hear about your job every day anymore. Things like that are things that like are helpful at the beginning. Like once it's day 3 of the thing that is upsetting you, put the boundary down. It's okay. It's going to be a lot more, like you said, if once you set up the system,
yep,
then you look like a big dick when you break apart the system, right?
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just advocate for yourself in the beginning.
It's definitely a lot
the same
harder.
way you should be advocating for yourself in the bedroom from the beginning. Things like that. These are all in the same realm.
And you know what? If that person truly respects you at the core and truly enjoys you and appreciates you, even if it may be hard for them to hear at first, they will synthesize it and come back to you and be there. I mean, I've been through this on more than one occasion, especially with my family. When I started throwing down boundaries, like, hey, I can't constantly just hear about the chisme, about like the aunts and the uncles and the whatever, because it's like constantly creating this negative energy. And I'm trying to put myself in a positive space. And like all the reactions were like basically, well, fuck you then, and it's because they're hearing like you don't want to talk to me and it's none of that. It's I want to talk to you
and it's
about
also
good things.
It's also a self-consciousness of, well, I just did this thing
exactly
for fucking years or months or days or weeks or whatever, and now you're telling me that you didn't like it from the beginning. So in a way you're hurting their feelings about something that was a norm. You allowed a norm to be created that you weren't into, and now this person is doubting every moment in their brain that they just had with you over the course of however long, and that sucks for them. So of course they're going to be defensive, of course they're going to get upset by it, of course. Now, are you just now learning how to set boundaries? Okay, I understand. Like, I'm not saying that this is the easiest science in the world.
No.
But the sooner you can learn how to set boundaries amongst friends, family, lovers, etc., the better off you will be in the long run. I set boundaries very easily with partners versus friends. I don't know what that is. Well, So I've been learning over time how to like really even it all out. Everybody gets boundaries in my life, including my mom, including my family, and they respect the boundaries because I explain it, I make sure that they get it, and then I check in on it. Are you still comfortable with this boundary? Are you still good with it?
I was going to say you will have to maintenance it because people will test your boundaries for sure, and they will, especially if they're used to a certain way, they will keep trying to wiggle in under the radar, and some people will never get it, and then you have decisions and choices to make there, like I was talking about earlier. But this is important. It's important for your personal health. It's important for your journey to pleasure, really. It just is. So
it's true. How are you going to bind your partner if you can't set up a boundary?
Exactly. Well said. Well fucking said.
Did we just talk for this long? It didn't feel like it was this long.
I know we did. And I mean, sometimes you just got to groove on about something. I feel like somewhere when we talk about things, I'm like, there must be something going on in my head where I need to have like this conversation where, I'm thinking about people in my life that like either I miss, or the relationship ended because I didn't do these things. And, I'm not taking full responsibility or anything, but I will take responsibility on my part that like, when those things happen, you know, I let them get too far on my behalf. Yeah.
Oh, now you're not. Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
We had a
I don't know what you just said, but it was wonderful. I agree 100%.
Exactly.
Well, I just want to put a punctuation on it by saying, you know, I've regretted a lot of my interactions in life because I didn't set a good expectation. I've lost friendships over it.
Absolutely.
I got burnt out to the point of literally going no contact with people.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm just now digging out of that hole.
Yeah.
And that's all because I was too much of a people pleaser to advocate for myself, set proper boundaries for both parties involved, and see them through. So all of my new friendships, I'm trying my hardest to make sure that I don't fuck that up.
That's good.
Going forward. And I think everybody should practice it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning into The Screw. Next week, we're going to talk about my butthole.
Ooh, the slop hole?
Spooky season. Yeah. We both have broken slop holes, so.
We do. We'll fix them someday.
Yeah. We'll advocate. We'll set boundaries for our slop holes.
Yeah. We don't want them out of commission, so.
Nothing worse than a out of commission slop hole. So.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening to The Screw. Download all of our episodes so that we can make money off of this shit.
Hell
we love
yeah.
you. Bye.
Bye.